This is our workflow due date session concerning permissions and notifications and how the other user interfaces are implemented with the due date and workflow. We're also going to talk about the reporting screen. I've logged in as a full access user. I want to show you a few screens where you're going to go to determine that particular user's permissions. Now, overall in ImagineTime, each staff person in the staff setup screen right here, which is already open, their permissions are set up in the Permissions and Options tab. They choose between three basic rights levels: staff, supervisor, and system manager. You can customize what each of those levels can do over in Menu, Passwords, and Rights. That's accessible from Setup and Utilities. And we ship the product with some default access levels, typically based upon our experience with accounting and CPA firms and other professionals and how they want their staff to access things as opposed to system managers and supervisors. Each menu option in ImagineTime is listed here. Okay, for example, due date reporting, you have to be at least a supervisor or above in order to access it. And if I don't want the option to appear on the staff person's menu, I can remove it, like by unchecking the staff ribbon. Now, the due date ribbon is a standardized ribbon, so whatever appears on that ribbon is based upon the finish line configuration. But you still have the ability to determine and set the level and keep staff people out from certain options. You also have the ability to set a password on top of the level requirement. So that's a little bit about how to get into the basic ribbon options. Okay, I'm going to close that screen now and jump back to the staff screen and show you that there's a couple of other relevant options. If you have the calendar option, and let's click on that. So FOL has the ability to see other people's calendars and also to modify and change staff assignments. Now, in order to see other people's calendars, you have to go to the staff screen and you have to enable the calendar rights level. There are three choices there: view my tasks only, view mine, view and change mine, and view others, and change, edit, delete all staff appointments. I'm sorry, the first one is view and change mine only. So the most restrictive is just to be able to view and change yours. Close that screen now, and we're going to go into here are the three primary finish line screens. The deadline notifications has to do with the workflow. That is a very restricted screen. We're going to get into that in more detail in just a moment. The calendar option, if you have purchased that, you can see staff tasks on the right side of the screen. Now, as a user with full rights, okay, I have the ability to look at other people's tasks. For example, let me switch off the all staff view. Coming back to just my calendar, I'm going to jump over to LMG. And now over here on the right side, I'm looking at LMG's task assignments right here. I also have some other options. If I go into here, and I can view different filters. So let me jump back to my setting for a minute, and let me change this to main subtasks that are not assigned and set the filters. Now I'm looking at 13 tasks down here on the navigation bar that are currently unassigned. So you can set certain levels of staff to be able to use this as a list to pick from. I'm going to assign that to DM, and assign this one to FOL, and so on and so forth. Now, why would you want to do that? Maybe you don't want to give all staff people access to the Manage Edit Deadline screen. Now, you can trim down what they can do in there, but you may not want them to be in there. So if you want to keep them out of that screen and just restrict them to making staff assignments in the calendar, you can do that. But right now we're looking at ImagineTime from the perspective of somebody that has full access rights to do anything. Now, I've mentioned there's two places where you adjust basic rights. That's in Menu, Ribbon, Passwords, and Rights, where you assign which level is required for each menu or ribbon option. And the other thing I covered briefly was in the staff setup, which is covered elsewhere in the program. That is where you define what rights the person has and also what rights they have when they're in the calendar. Let me give you an example of this by opening up the program under a different limited rights user. So let's go in as LNG. Now LNG has the ability to view his tasks right down here. These are the tasks assigned. He has 12. You can scroll through them. He has the ability to do some filtering on his tasks. You can take a look at the datasheet view and see what's been assigned. What he can't do is he can't assign them to other people. He has no ability at the top left of the calendar to switch to another person's schedule. Okay. He also can't complete an item. If he tries to complete it, it says he's not permitted to do that. What can he do? Well, down here, these two subtasks are assigned to him. He has the ability to mark them as in process or complete his particular subtask. And he also has the ability to make some notes. You know, for example, missing info. So he's very restricted in what he can do on the calendar screen. He's also restricted on this deadline notification screen. He can, over there, if you don't have the calendar option, you're going to be using the deadline notifications to give staff a limited heads up. What I mean by limited is, what can I do? Well, I can say that this task is in process and this task is complete, and I can record a time entry or make a note. I can also run a report on my view, but I can't see other people's, and I can't change my options. So this is an example of somebody that is locked down. If they don't have the calendar option, they're going to use the deadline notification screen. Now, we'll get into the setting of some of the specific options that govern how the calendar screen and the deadline notification screen are locked down. But while we're here, let's take a look at what we have in the notification screen. We have my current assignments that are supposed to be started today and in the past. What's coming up, and there isn't anything in the next 7 days. What's past due, these are assignments that are delinquent. And these are assignments that will be upcoming deadlines, and there aren't any in the next 7 days. Now, these tabs are based upon two fields. They're based upon the start field, or in the case of a subtask, the assign field. And then they're based on the due date field. Now, if you're using subtasks, each subtask has its own due date. If you have main tasks without subtasks, if you're using the if you're just not setting up detailed subtasks, you're going to have a primary deadline date that will appear in this field here. But let me just distinguish again. This is the main task deadline, the fourth column from the left, and this is the subtask deadline. And that makes sense that you need to complete all the components. In most cases, you do have to complete all the components before you can complete the main deadline. Some main tasks can be set up with a follow-up subtask to occur after the main deadline is actually accomplished. Okay, so the notification screen is a way for you to track the deadlines and the assignments that you're responsible for, to mark them as in process or as complete. And apparently this staff person here does not have the right to do this in this particular mode. And let me explain what that is. At the top right of the screen, we have 3 view modes. Viewing both main tasks and subtasks together or separately. Now, you cannot edit main tasks and subtasks together because that's based upon a rather complex query. Most times, you're going to be using edit subtasks because if you've distributed workflow and you have steps, that's what the staff is going to be editing. So when I come in here and change that mode and double click, now I can mark that subtask is complete. And based upon this main task's hierarchical characteristic, I'm 85% complete. That's shown on the bottom of the screen. Clicking a report shows me the subtasks that are currently assigned to me. Now, these options up here are ways of changing my filters, okay? And I can change my filter settings for myself and, see farther into the future, okay? I can also filter for subtasks that are not in process. Okay, now that would be relevant just to let you know that these are the things you haven't started or flagged as being started. All right, I've logged back in as FOL, full rights, and he's also in subtask mode. I'm going to change that to main task. Okay, this is an example of a main task that doesn't have any subtasks. And we can look that up in the Manage Edit Deadline screen by going over to Calendar, Manage Edit Deadlines. And if you don't have too many tasks, you could just scroll through them this way and look for Bartlett. Okay, and that's her 1040 ES right there. And it has no detail tracking. Okay, it's been set up just as a yes, it's complete, no, it's not complete, and you don't need steps for it. So it is tracked as a main task only. Now when I view my main tasks and subtasks, again, I can't mark them as in process or complete, but I can see them together. And what distinguishes a main task from a subtask on this view is that it's highlighted in blue and there won't be an assigned or due field here because those fields pertain specifically to subtasks. Okay, now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go over to the due date permissions screen and discuss how you're going to set permissions. So we'll go to Setup Utilities, Due Date Setup and Utilities. On the bottom of the screen, we're looking at three staff level individuals, and as I click, the permissions on the right are displayed for that staff. And as you see here, each one of these staff have different permissions, and we want to standardize their permissions. Actually, in this mode, I can only view. So if I want to begin setting permissions, I need to click this button here. And now I can skip by holding down the Control key, or if you want to select them all, just keep clicking like that. So I've selected three. Now I'm going to determine my permissions, and I want these staff to be restricted. I'm going to allow them to access the tasks from the calendar. I don't want to allow them to override the main task due date. They can't change the budgeted hours. If I do give them access to the Manage Edit Deadline screen, if I display it on their ribbon, or if I put it in their favorites, those are two optional ways of displaying things, I am not going to allow them to delete anything in there. And here, permit user to change main form task due date assignments when working from calendar or notifications. Okay, I am not going to permit them to do that, prevent rescheduling, and I'm not going to allow them to view other unassigned tasks. So I'm not going to put them in the role of being able to assign out unassigned tasks. That will be set for another person. Finally, under subtasks, not going to allow them to change the due date of a subtask. We set that up according to firm policy. I'm not going to allow them to add new subtasks. And I'm going to prevent them from deleting them. And they can't I'm also going to prevent them from editing subtasks assigned to others if they were in the Manage Edit Deadline screen. Finally, I do want the notifications to pop up automatically when they log in, but I don't want to let them see the other staff's notifications. And the default notification level I'll set to 14 days. So now I've customized these permissions, and I will hit the red Save button, and that applies those settings, okay, to each of those staff. If I go back to view mode, if you notice now as I scroll through each individual staff, their settings are consistent. As I pick Diane, you'll notice that her settings are different. Diane's a staff supervisor. She has the ability to change staff assignments in the calendar, but I'm not allowing her. In fact, I'm not allowing her in the Manage Edit Deadline screen. I don't have it on her favorites ribbon. It's excluded from her menu. So this is an example of how you can keep people out of this Manage Edit Deadline screen. And if they are in this Manage Edit Deadline screen, they try and delete something, you can either caution or prevent them from deleting. You can also prevent them from changing the final adjusted date in the Manage Edit Deadline screen. So you can let them in, but you can prevent them from changing that date. You can prevent them from deleting. You can also prevent them from changing subtask characteristics. So you can lock down that Manage Edit Deadline screen to quite a degree, but you can also keep staff out of that screen completely and limit them to either the notification screen or the calendar screen. So that's a little bit of how the optional user interfaces, the notification screen, which is accessed here and will pop up automatically if you set it in the initial permission settings. That's the notification screen. That comes with the workflow module. The calendar, task, and appointment screen is an optional tool that comes with the calendar Microsoft Outlook integration add-in. That's a very nice tool. It allows you to do some additional things that the notification screen doesn't. But the notification screen is primarily used for staff to be able to mark their activities in progress, make notes, record time, but not change basic characteristics of a task or delete it. Okay? I think that gets us through the notifications and permissions and the optional user interfaces. The last subject we want to discuss is reporting. In our first training module, we covered how you can run a report based upon what your current filter is set for in the Manage Edit Deadline screen. I've set a filter for monthly bookkeeping, so I've got all the clients that have that task are displayed on the right. It happens to only be one in our demo. I can go to the Report Copy tab and click Run Report, and it will give me a report based upon that current filter. That's a valuable tool. It's used from within the Manage Edit Deadline screen. What about when you're wanting to run a lot of different varieties of reports? In that case, you're going to want to open up your due date reporting screen. That's shown below here. This screen has 5 sections. We covered this just a little bit in an earlier demonstration, but you select your report option, the type of form that you want to pick. So if we're going to mimic the report we just did, I would say ignore completion status. I was looking at a particular type of task. These are alphabetic. So if I go down here in monthly books, I'd like to sort this by name and start date. And I want to pick all years in the system, all due date years. There's another way to approach this I'll explain in just a moment. I don't want detailed subtask tracking history. I have 2 options there, with or without. I'm going to choose without, and I'm going to run the report. Now, that's the same report that we looked at just a minute ago. But in this screen, I have a number of options. I can look at it with tracking history detail. That's going to give me all my subtasks, lots of information about budgets. If I check the option for budget right here, and if I want to show task notes, I can show those as well. Now, you have the ability to save reports in the system. So at this point, if I want to save the basic setup of the report, I click Save, and my monthly bookkeeping report is now saved. So when I come back in here, close, reopen, and choose that Save Report, it'll make all the basic selections for me, including picking the right report. It won't pick all the years or the due date parameters because they can change from one period to the next. So that's a convenient way to return to a report. And in this example, I've shown you how to select data based on the due date year. We've selected all due date years. Due date years, in fact, can be completely transparent. Users of our version 9 system and prior are accustomed to selecting by due date year. However, if you're starting with version 10, the default when you open the screen, let me close and reopen, is for date range. All right? So typically, you're going to be filtering for incomplete items on a date range, or you're going to be filtering for completed items, or you may be looking for items based upon the due date subtask dates. Okay? Here I'm going to just take the main task due date range. I'm going to pick 04, 04, 01, 12 to 04/30/12. I really don't know what I've got in this demo database. I'd like to sort it by name, so I'm going to let it pick everything and just click Run Report. Okay, so that's everything that's not complete that's in our database that's coming due in the month of April. And you can see in total there are 24 items. So let's tone that down a little bit. I'm going to pick 2 items over here, 1120, 1120S's, and I happen to know that I've got the wrong date parameter for that. So I'm going to back that up a month. And I'm going to select Tracking Detail and click Report. So now we're seeing just the 1120s and the 1120S's that are coming due in that period of time that have not been completed. If I want to get a complete inventory of things, okay, I'm going to do Date Range, Ignore Completion Status. Okay, that's everything that's been completed and not complete for all tasks that are 1120s or 1120S's. So you can see there's quite a few filters here. Let's do the completed one. And let's change it back down to no tracking detail. So none of these have been completed. Let me clear the list to go back to the default and see if I've completed anything between this period. Okay, there was nothing in that result set either, but I happen to have a couple years of information here, so I'm going to back it up to 2011. And between January 1st, 2011 and April 30th, I'd like to ignore the completion status of items, and I'm going to pick the 1120s and the 1120S's. And let's see what we get now. No tracking detail. There are 3. Let's broaden our sample now to everything. Okay, now in the first 4 months of the year, alphabetically sorted by client for all tasks, I can quickly see how we're doing. Current status, if it's green, it means it's been completed. Okay, if it's red, okay, it's not far enough along. Yellow, we're on the way. That's generally the significance of those. And this is the main due date report without showing subtasks. Another report option is the status levels report. Now, when do you use status levels? Status levels apply to things that do not have user-defined subtasks. So again, if we go over to Setup and Utilities, and I look at my main tasks and forms, I can use the status level report would be meaningful for 1040s, anything that says status levels only or status levels detail. If I get down to user-defined subtasks, it won't be relevant for that. So this is a useful report for 1040s. It gives you the ability to track progress on something, even though you might not be using the detailed subtasks, because you can fill in the status level dates at the main task level and get this progress chart going from left to right. So this is a bit of workflow for due date users that don't have the full workflow module. You may be interested in using this status level report. Finally, another report that's used by a lot of firms that still track paper is this routing sheet. It allows you to assign staff and also show when the work was completed last year. So I also suggest investigating the use of that report if you still track paper throughout the office. Finally, the notifications report, which we already covered, is also accessible from within this screen as well. So typically the notification report is printed by the staff person when they're in the notification screen, so they have a hard copy of what's assigned to them as a current task that's assigned and not due, or something that's maybe due and past due, and they want to print a list of that. But you can also access that report from this screen. One final option in this screen that's popular is the Jump To button. If you're in the reporting screen and you're thinking to yourself, gee, I wish I could take this filter and carry it over to the Manage Edit Deadline screen, you can. You click this button, it's going to open up that screen, and it's going to filter it for the 1040s. That's the same filter set that we were using in the reporting screen. So that's a quick way of getting from the reporting screen over to the Manage Edit Deadline screen. Okay, that covers our sessions for due date, workflow, and basic reporting. If you have further questions, don't forget to consult the comprehensive manual. There are literally about 60 pages of well-documented instructions here on how to use the system, cover in depth more information about all these report choice filters. Well, one other one that's popular is, I haven't gotten the information in yet, okay, or the information has been received, or tax forms that are on first extension. You just need to experiment with those filters a little bit and use them in combination with the other report choices. If you have any other questions, our competent support staff will be more than happy to assist you. Thanks for tuning in.